Okay. We are, I think this is, oh, it's not 9, definitely not meeting 9. I think it's meeting 14. I forgot to change that one. So we are, we've been doing this for a while, guys. I think it's been now over a year, which is pretty cool. Thank you for continuing to show up for this. I really appreciate it. Recording will be posted on the Summer Voice page, so if you need to take off at some point, I'm hoping this will be a bit of a discussion that I will be presenting to you all for the first part, and then we'll switch to a discussion about outreach stuff. So if you can hang out, that would be great, but if you can't, we'll have the recording. Renee is going to take minutes for us, and I think we can probably aim to be done at 5:15, but I'll stay until 5:30 as per usual if anyone wants to keep chatting. So just some housekeeping stuff. I'll give you an overview of Offshoot's work and the next steps. Then we'll talk about outreach, sort of what we've done up till now, how it's going. Then I'd like to go into breakout rooms to just do a little bit of thinking among us as a group about things that we each individuals can do. And then we'll come back and talk to each other. As per usual, we'll hold public comment until the end. So if that 617 number is a member of the public, thank you for joining us, and also just hang out. If you have something to say, feel free to, pop it in the chat if you have to go, or we'll reserve some time at the end.
I just want to say this. This number is Amy. I'm on my way home. I just thought I'd join by the phone, but
amazing.
I'll switch the computer when I get home.
Thanks, Amy. Nice to have you here. Appreciate it. Everyone who's on a phone in their car, please drive safely. Okay, so as per Tori's request, which I appreciate, I put all of our files in a Google Drive. I sent you all the link. Does anyone not have that link? Are you all good on that? Okay. The expert interviews are all there. I have not watched all of them yet, but I wonder if you all have. If you have, is there anything that really struck you or anything you want to bring up here just to point out, or advertisement for that particular video to tell other people they need to watch that one? I thought Cass Urban Mead's talk about urban trees and trees in general was really great. So if you haven't watched that one, I would recommend that. Nothing else.
I've listened to, I think, 3 of them now, and they were all great. So they're all providing different useful information. I really liked the, I think it was Avalon, that nocturnal insects person. Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that one was great too.
I mean, since we're a city body, I don't know if what we can support legally, or however whatever we fall under, because the nocturnal pollinator one dovetailed nicely into the resolution that is being put forth by, I forget which representative in our Massachusetts Congress, on dark skies. Renee, he came to one of the Massachusetts Pollinator Network. Do you remember?
Yes, I'm spacing on his name, but I can find it for you in about 3 seconds. Hold on.
Yeah. Just something to, I don't know where it goes from here, if it goes to committee and dies, or if there's some hope for it, but it's interesting that there's talk now at a higher level of supporting night skies, pollinator insects, health of birds, health of us. So
yeah,
It's Sean Garbely. If that's helpful.
Yeah, sorry to be off topic, but I just thought of it.
I don't think it's off topic. I think it was a super interesting talk. So, yeah, I think the question of light will be a part of this plan for sure. And it's something we've been recommending to folks just through these few small, tabling events, so. Okay, we'll talk about meeting schedule a little bit later. And there's one big thing on my to-do list is to figure out a timing date for an insect identification training event. Was hoping it could be this week, but I just got way too swamped and it wasn't feasible. So we'll do it soon. I know Claire runs them on a regular basis anyway, but we'll do one that's a little more of a special promoting this plan opportunity too. Anyone have any announcements related?
Well,
things?
I just
Yeah.
related to insect education. I was thinking it could be really helpful for the plan. And I can mention this next time Offshoots is with us, but to have, I know there are the 6 sort of keystone or whatever the term we wanted to use was, species to look for, but it would be really awesome if there was a guide on any and all insect you might see around your yard, in the public garden, wherever you happen to be. So to start to teach people not to be so afraid of them, and not say, oh, gross, it's a bug. Like have them be able to ID it, or at least, yeah, I mean, that would be terrific actually, and so they can start to learn about it. So I don't know if that's something they could find someone who could help them with that. Maybe Nick could pull that together, or Claire, or some sort of, or Amy, actually. Amy, you're here. You might be the perfect person. So it just occurred to me.
I think the way that they are moving is kind of they're distancing themselves from only talking about just those 6 insects and, or not just, but highlighting in particular those 6 insects. And so I think from what I can tell, there will be more of an emphasis on, all insect ID is helpful. I'll show you on the Summer Voice page, there are videos introducing you to those 6 insects. So I think that's sort of how that's playing out, is like, okay, we can't talk to you, but we can't teach you about every single one, but here's 6 at least as an introduction. And then, but I think doing an insect ID event that just partly even orients people to how to use iNaturalist so that they know how to tackle that kind of like group powered insect ID effort would be terrific. So yeah, I'm with you on that, and we'll talk to Offshoot, or I'll probably talk to Amy and Claire about that first, so that when we get this event going, we have a good agreed upon plan. Any other related announcements, things, events people should know about, stuff coming up?
When's the next deep paving?
What, is that a question for me?
Yeah, did it come and go, or the next deep paving?
No, I think Amy's is our next one on the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, easy enough. All right, so I'm just gonna launch into a little bit of a summary for you all of where Offshoot stands right now, how they're doing in their work, where we are at. This is sort of our general overview. Task 1, site analysis, task 2, engagement, plan development, task 3, and then, they will be involved in the final plan documentation, and we will sort of take over as primary leads in the plan promotion beyond the summer. Expert interviews, they have done 6. The other 3 that were planned didn't pan out for scheduling issues or people not getting back to them, etc. I did talk to them about Dr. Jagir and like touch base with them again. Do you want to talk to him too? They talked to Nick. Nick went back and looked at his research and said, we've been looking at their plant sheets. We've been looking at his research. I think we sort of have it covered through that like in-depth look at his work. So Tori, I know that's something you had asked about multiple times, and I just wanted to make sure I let you know that we'd had that conversation and that that was a choice that Nick felt like he didn't want to, you know, waste Dr. Jagir's time. They have already been kind of diving into his work, but.
I mean, these would be paid, they're paid consultants to all
They're
these
not.
the expert interviews,
Yeah,
those
they
people
are
were not
doing this out
compensated?
of the generosity of their heart, spending an hour with us, so.
That's not cool. Sorry. That does not impress me if we're hiring consultants to not pay people for their time. Just,
It's not quite how I understood it to work out initially, but, yeah, anyway, I hear you, I understand.
Yeah.
So site analysis is the big thing that we have. Oh, I just went backwards, that's why. The analysis report is in, we have it. It's 12 pages. They gave it to us in a Word document format for sort of easy review. It's structured in many ways similar to how they've presented data to you before. So it's, you know, sort of biodiversity data overview, where it's coming from. The catalog of species, so they're looking at taxonomic units found in Somerville, 322, and then ones that could potentially occur in Somerville that are either nearby or parallel kinds of conditions. They talk about at-risk species in both categories of here in Somerville and in the area. Temporal distribution, spatial context and distribution, plant associations, and then data gaps. There are a couple of appendices that go with this document as well. One that is a list of species in each of these 6 groups that they've identified. You know, bees, wasps, butterflies, and they, you know, give the group, they give the species, and then status for how they're doing, calling out ones that are declining. And then the next appendix is plant associations for each of those 6 groups as well, and they've separated them out by native species and and exotic species. So you can just by, you know, quick glance see the difference in the proportion of taxa that relate to these species, the native species versus the exotic species. So
and Acer, I'm guessing, is just Norway maples and
yeah,
and
right.
sycamore.
Yeah, I think for the simplicity of this, they're not listing all of them, but for the non-native acers, it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So our plan for reviewing this is to have PSEF do a first pass, kind of get some low-hanging fruit done. We also thought about dividing and conquering a little bit so that maybe Amy and Claire, and Amy, you can chime in here. Do you want to do a review of this and sort of provide your, you know, insect expertise on this particular portion? And then the plan will be to, when we have that full plan draft, that everyone will review it. And we've thought about doing this as a Google Doc like we did with the RFP so that people could make comments and track changes. And people can see each other's comments so that it's a sort of a group effort editing process. That's our imagining of that. I kind of want to know if Amy, and I was going to ask Claire, but I'll ask her offline, if you have time in the next week to read this 12-page document. Some of it will seem familiar from the presentations, but I want to know your opinion if that makes sense for your schedule. But you might be driving, so you can let me know when you have a chance. I'll talk about outreach in a minute, but they are on to plan development. And that is including right now, Kate Kennan is doing a wide myriad of planting designs. I have not seen them yet. I've seen the way that they're thinking of structuring them. But they're looking at everything from, I see you unmuted.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me now?
I can, yeah.
So I was trying to unmute and it wouldn't let me. I guess it just finally, I was going to say, yes, I can review the document, but for some reason it was, okay, I'll mute again now. Yes, I can do it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Amy. So I think what this plan development, what they've really been working on is one master list of species, plant species, how they relate to insect taxa, and the conditions that they need to grow, some specific qualities of those plants, like do they have a taproot? Are they yellow? Are they early spring blooming? That sort of thing. So they are developing this massive master plant list, which they are going to make available to everyone once this is done. So it'll be a resource for the city and it can be a resource for anyone. They are also pulling from that particular sort of toolkit templates for folks. If you have only the capacity to do container gardens, they're looking at container gardens. They're starting to develop suggestions for how you structure a planting, thinking about like structural sort of larger plants that hold the space, ground cover species, some that provide seasonal interest or you know, early to late blooming things so that you have the seasons covered. But they are sort of thinking about this wide range of, okay, if you have shade, if you have sun, if you like yellow, if you don't, and then they will also be presenting design solutions that are specific to those 6 species as well. So you can come at it kind of from 2 angles is how they're thinking about it. One is if you want to understand the strategies to support the great black digger wasp, or if you are more aesthetically inclined and you want to have pots on your deck and you really love the color yellow, that it'll be an array of species that provide, you know, a sort of like maximized amount of pollinator benefit if you're coming at it from a particular condition or a particular aesthetic desire. So people can attack this plan's recommendations from a variety of places. So that's all in the works. I haven't really seen that much of it, but their proposal is that at our next committee meeting, so here we are for these 2024 meetings. For their next meeting, they're going to bring some materials for your review. I think share those with you beforehand or after, depending on how they decide they want to receive feedback from you. That will be more related to planting design, planting proposals, templates, that sort of thing. So it won't be the full draft. Our thought is that the June 10th meeting will be a very public presentation of the near final draft. We'll invite as many people as we can. It'll be an opportunity to hear their proposals and to provide feedback. But the May 13th will be kind of like a step in that direction. So talking about plant species a little more specifically at the next meeting. And then we'll have a final plan release something or another that I need to figure out the exact timing of. We're hoping we can align it so that Nick can be here. Because Nick is going to be in Maine for a part of the end of the month in June, and we would like to have him around. So that's where things stand right now on their side. Any questions on that moment?
Have you seen any of the material,
I've
Allison?
seen a couple of small, so they've shown me sort of just in passing the master spreadsheet. They've also shown me a couple of the ways that they're thinking about structuring these planting proposals, which is like, if you have a pot, here's how you can imagine kind of divvying up the space between some ground covers, some taller species. If you have a, you know, sort of typical 3x6 rectangular front yard plot, and then they're thinking about it. They're using recommendations from Claudia West and Roy Diblick, I think is his name, and a couple other landscape designers. Thinking about like trying to make it very approachable for people. So gridding it out a little bit to understand the density of plantings that you should be aiming for, and then making it something that you could replicate if you have twice as much space, or if you have a space that's much longer, that you can extend that grid out and imagine how that planting design would extend into those spaces. But I've only seen the start of the kind of visual way that they're presenting that. And it's very
Can I
much about
pass on?
the residential stuff. Yeah.
I just pass on some information. I'm guessing they're doing this, but in addition to sort of food that the pollinators need and their sort of favorite plants, just having the host species and, Doug Tallamy's top 10 woody species, top 10 herbaceous plants for hosting.
I will pass that along. Yep. I think in the design strategies where they talk about the specific insects, that's also going to be a chance for them to say like, a small area of bare ground is going to be really helpful for this ground FTB, and this species needs trees near it. So this kind of strategies will also be a little more legible, I think, in those. I don't remember if those are the toolkits or the templates or what, but in that section. Yeah. Any other questions? I have also wondered if, we've been doing this thing where we have an off-week meeting to talk about the offshoots presentation. I'm not trying to, double our time commitment necessarily, particularly while we're doing outreach stuff. So I'm not thinking of scheduling one for both the May 13th and the June 10th meeting, but I wonder if you all have any insight. If you think about the next meeting as some draft, particularly planting focused materials coming to you, and the June 10th meeting as a more near final draft, not final, but like they're getting all of the pieces in place. When would be most useful to have an off-week conversation? Would it be after seeing a lot of it, or would it be after seeing just sort of a piece of it?
I would think it depends on how willing they are to change the plan based on our feedback. So if they're totally happy to have us see the near final draft and have tons of edits and they're cool with that, I would suggest at that point. But if they want to go into the final with a good idea of what it's going to be like, then I would think after May 13th.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it's sort of a fine balance of figuring out a way to keep them on track with getting their work done and giving us plenty of time to give them feedback and for them to make edits. So, Michael, did you have a comment?
Well, I think probably after the 13th, if the information they provide us on the 13th is close enough to being complete that we can make, comments that make sense to the final draft. I guess I would disagree with Renee a little bit on going over the final draft and suggesting changes. They're working for us. We're not working for them. So if they write something and say, this is our near final draft, and we think it needs to be changed, I have no problem with that. So, and also I won't be here June 10th.
Okay, so maybe Tori, are you unmuted because you've got something to say, or are you?
Oh, no, I agree
Okay.
I agree with Renee's sort of question. Like, I mean, how willing are they to rework their document? So it makes sense to me to have it after the 13th, so we don't waste any of our time and send them into the correct direction. If they're not headed in that direction, if they are, I mean, makes sense after the 13th and to me.
Anyone not on camera? Have any opinion?
Hi, sorry, I'm driving, which is why I'm off camera, but I agree with giving feedback earlier rather than later. This is Alejandra, by the way. I'd rather steer them in the right direction rather than having to rework a whole document. I mean, ideally, we could provide feedback at those times, but I imagine that the feedback for will be like a little more specific. And a little bit more about specific points rather than an overall direction, and it would be less excessive feedback ideally. But I would go for earlier. So I would go for the 13th.
Renee, before you jump in, I just want to clarify too, this is also about like when it's most useful for you to have a conversation with each other. But go ahead, Renee.
I'm wondering if we should plan for after the 13th and then have sort of penciled in potentially after June if we find there are huge changes in May and then we see the June presentation and we feel like there are still changes or they didn't address them, then we might want to meet again to discuss it.
Yeah, that's fair. But I think sounds like I should schedule one for May and we'll play June by ear, but. Great. Okay, so I wanted to get into outreach stuff, and just to clarify a little bit, you know, I think the roles that I see, are that, you know, our role as a committee is partly to attend and organize events to solicit feedback from the public. We're trying to identify targets for outreach connections too, as a group. We're keeping an eye on our blind spots, and strategizing for how we remedy that. And the way that we've done that in the past, you know, for my OSRP outreach, we did some public meetings, we did a survey, then we saw who wasn't attending those, who hadn't really responded to that survey, and have tried to do follow-up focus groups, conversations with folks to fill in some of those gaps. And then we're gonna, you know, make observations through all of these experiences and share that with offshoots as a way to get that information to them to inform the plan. And they take our findings and incorporate it into the recommendations. And then they're also, I'm gonna ask them to make recommendations for our ongoing outreach so that they can also see if we are missing anything, if there are any blind spots that we haven't caught, and if they can suggest some strategies for how we you know, engage successfully in the future. And I thought I would just touch base. Some of you have already engaged with this stuff in detail. But can you all see now the all hands on deck thing? Okay. These materials are all in the Google Drive. If you want to zoom in on them, you can, in that context. But just to give you a sense of what we're asking, we have two things that we're asking people to do. One is the map exercise, which is this guy. They can put a pin on the location where they have a garden. So we're asking people if they're actively gardening, and if they are, if it's mostly flowers, vegetables, if it's mostly, you know, ornamental flowers, and or if they're intentionally planting native species. And so that map is developing over the course of these few events that we've had so far. And we'll continue to. We're also asking people to fill out this 2-page thing. So the way that it evolved was based on our feedback. So can you pledge your support and can you do these different things? So everything from leaving the leaves to talking to your neighbors to planting flowers. So giving people a wide range of options for things that they can do to participate. It also gives them an opportunity to share their contact information so we can be in touch with them moving forward. And then the second page is the temp check thing of how do you feel about this project, about the idea of increasing the amount of pollinators in Somerville, and why. So I had someone who was very reluctant to fill it out. He was talking about how he has this perception of them as looking kind of messy. And I was like, great, fill it out. Like, tell us what you're reluctant about. We want to know your opinion too. So those are the big asks. We're also giving people this 2-page handout based on our feedback again. One is if you don't have a garden, here are things you can do. So you can join our pollinator sightings group. You can add habitat in other ways. If you don't have a garden at home, you could work with your landlord, you could work with a school group, and then reducing the use of outdoor lights, closing your blinds or curtains. And then also, if you do have a garden, planting native flowers, and they make a suggestion of, oh, that didn't work, 3-foot wide groupings being ideal. And that's coming out of their data and research. No pesticides, replacing your lawn, skipping fall cleanup, etc. So that is just a handout for them to take home. And then we have this board, and this is one that I printed some out that I'm going to try to put in the libraries to just have up there. So it links people to the Summer Voice page and gives people a general sense of what are pollinators. Pollinators are in decline. You can help. And it points out the kind of 6 species that we're just using as an example of pollinators found in the city. And that will link to Excuse me, 1 second. To these videos, so on the Summer Voice page, there are links to the online community map. So this is, if you have a garden, this is like the online version of the mapping exercise. So you can put it in here, and we'll be putting the pins that we've gotten so far at these outreach exercises into this. There's also the digital form of the engagement sheet. So how can you pledge your support? How will you help? And then in the videos area, and here are the 6 videos that Nick made that you too can go watch. That where he's talking about these different species. And they're supposed to be very approachable. This is supposed to be for a wide audience, not for the pro necessarily, but for folks who are interested and want to learn. So
Okay,
those,
okay, sorry.
yeah, go
Let
ahead,
me know when a good pause space is for
go
you.
for it. Yeah,
Okay, so for when you can add, for the digital way of adding your garden to the map, can we add pictures?
Oh boy. That's something we've been debating. And we can change it so that you can add pictures. I know that there are like other platforms where people are doing this. And I think there was some question from offshoots of like, when you have a city project and you allow people to upload photos, do you run the risk of someone uploading something that you don't want there? I'm not particularly concerned about that. I don't think pollinator related projects are at much risk of being photobombed or anything, but that's sort of a question that I hadn't resolved in my head. So if you have an opinion one way or the other.
Well, I guess one thought is, does this now become a city? This becomes then a city document that we might have a curator for.
Yeah, I
right?
will be an admin on this. It's like an extra data layer. The mapping exercise is not super precise. People aren't giving us their exact address. They're giving us, they're putting a little pin on a map that is the whole city. So it's not super fine grained. When they put it in here, they can, get a little more specific about the exact address. But
Yep.
when we go in and try to input all of those pins, it's going to be not exactly precise. So this isn't something that you would create a garden tour from, like the mapping tool that you all have, but it's kind of
Right.
an overall sense of habitat in the city. I think one of the benefits of doing this at outreach events is partly for people to see that they're not alone, that other people are doing this. And to kind of feel like they're participating. So it's a little bit of like a psychological benefit in addition to some data, but it's not the most precise from those mapping exercises. So, yeah.
I have a question on the outreach materials.
Yeah.
In their application, they talked a lot about doing multilingual outreach. Has any
Yeah.
of that happened yet?
It would have happened if I had submitted them all for translation. I need to do that ASAP. The translators have been super swamped with Civic Day stuff too, so I'm trying to catch them now that they're sort of free of that. But I think the idea was that the most important, like we're gonna create a handout version of this information that will get translated so that that's, we can hand that out to anyone and it's not just on a big polishy board. And then this one will get translated so that people have a way to engage with that. And this one as well. So those 3 are sort of like the big things that we're both asking and giving people, and on my to-do list for as soon as humanly possible is to get that request in. Yeah.
Thank
But
you.
these things are things we can use moving forward too, so I'm hoping it's not too late for anything.
Allison, I'm wondering, because I think Nick's videos are not very long, if it would be possible to get those interpreted, that feels maybe the most important, just to start introducing people to.
That is a great question. I have no idea if they do.
Do you go through, oh no, you don't go through the LIPS program, the Welcome Project program, right?
We go through our like
Yeah.
Summer Viva office. Yeah, and they sometimes hire out for bigger projects. So it's possible that they have done this before, translating videos, but I haven't encountered it yet, so I'll have to ask. But you're right, they're pretty short. This one's just 3 minutes. So
I wonder if those could even be shown in schools.
I think that's kind of Nick's hope. Yeah. So even if we got them into Spanish and Portuguese, you know, if it's not all, you know, five languages, which we typically do, but even if we just had a couple additional languages, it would probably be nice. Let me find out. Anything else?
I had a question on the content of one of the outreach materials.
Mhm.
And that is our famous Skip the Fall cleanup.
Mhm.
There's also something like, for me, when I fall cleanup, first of all, or spring cleanup, nothing ever gets like raked away. Like everything just stays on site. And if you want to, you can cut it up into smaller bits, because it's all about building soil. So, you know, sort of, it's not just skipping fall cleanup, it's changing to the practices to leaving your material,
Yeah.
leaf litter, you know, leaving material on site. And Heather Home recommends 18 inches for plant stocks, to leave at least 18 inches.
Yeah, Nick's comment was 6 to 18, and for the simplicity of this particular exercise, I was like, that's a very big range. And he has I don't know if you've seen this, he has a whole website on guidelines for leaving perennial growth. That I will try to pull up and share.
Sure.
So there's like nuance that you can get to, but I think to your point, it might, you know, not every plant is going to be 18 inches tall. So I think he was trying to suggest that even shorter ones are worth leaving, but I think there's language that can be
Yeah.
honed in that.
Because
But
yeah,
I-
the idea is like, and we're not really hitting it here, and that's okay, is that all of this is about rebuilding soil to build up that leaf litter that houses the animals and keeps them protected, especially insects overwintering. So it's like, yeah, you just kind of want to keep that building and store more carbon, and you know, rejuvenating soil health. And again, if we don't hit it on this, you know, plan, that's okay, but I just want to keep it in mind that that's part of
yeah,
that's a part of all of this.
I think it's fine to make that recommendation for them for the plan itself, you know.
Mhm.
You know, I think clearly these outreach materials are sort of like the short, sweet summary, you know, as low hanging fruit as possible to make people feel like they can just sort of have something quick to bite into. But for the plan itself, we can ask them to make a sort of more, you know, fleshed out argument.
And I like how they've tailored it to the city, you know, small spaces, like, you know, understanding that sometimes all you have is a container or a balcony or stoop,
Right.
or 3 foot wide by 2 foot wide or whatever. So that's
Yeah.
encouraging.
I'm hoping to, so just to give you all a sense, these are the events that we had last week. We were supposed to have one at Groundwork Somerville as well, but that one got canceled due to rain. There's some things coming up next. But I thought we would maybe just take a moment to check in about like, how did it go? I'll stop sharing just for a second, you know, like, I think I'm learning something every time I do this. And, you know, I've done sort of like overviews of the materials with Renee and Cynthia and Vanessa to try to get them up to speed on like what my intentions are, but I also think that as we're doing this kind of outreach work that we're gonna learn what's working, what's not working, and yeah, I just thought if anyone has any insight or comments or thoughts from outreach from the last week, so it would be great to have Cynthia and Lisa here because they were also doing work, but they are elsewhere, otherwise occupied at the moment.
I can talk a little bit about Civic Day, get us started. Michael was there too. We were table buddies. There wasn't that there weren't like crowds of people coming through. So, our feedback is limited, and it was mostly like people within walking distance of City Hall that seemed to be coming. We definitely got some more pins on the map. People would like walk by our table, maybe grab a tree seedling. They were giving away service berries. There wasn't any real in-depth conversations about stuff in general. So I did not get to promote all of the different engagement materials that were created. I had a few people take the flyers. I got a couple of the forms filled out, but mostly people were sort of meandering and not like there to get a spiel for 20 minutes. So Amy also brought some little seed packets. That was also a big hit. Like planting small seeds is preferable to trees for most Somerville properties, it turns out.
Did you give away all of your shed bushes?
No, I have a few healed in my backyard. So I have like
You gonna plant
12.
those there and have a shed bush forest?
It's not my yard and I don't have the space for that. So they're just waiting for a new home if anyone wants.
I'll take one.
Okay. They're little whips. They're cute.
Okay, I'd love one.
They look
Okay,
great in
awesome.
Somerville backyards. I have one that's
Mhm.
much bigger than the one she was gonna get, and it looks great.
I'm gonna wait and see which ones like look the best and I'll give you a nice one, Renee.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I can update on the growing center. I was supposed to do groundwork, but that's the one that got rained out. There were a lot of people there. We were up in a corner, but I think Cynthia was actually suggesting people move up to us, and so we had quite a few people come by, and we actually had a lot of really good conversations. I found people were really not interested in signing up for things. Had a couple people put things in the map, but that didn't seem, they were like, oh, I would say, oh, and do you want to put your pin in the map? And oh, okay. But it wasn't like, oh yeah, this is cool. Like they sort of felt like they did it because I asked them to, not because they were inspired. And I don't really know why. There was a little confusion, I think, because the map says, does it say ornamental? And so they're like, well, what's ornamental? And like, well, I think it's considered like, there's a native garden, there's a non-native garden. Maybe that's what it is, or more conventional lawn. But I didn't even really know how to suggest that. So I was just sort of deciding to say, well, if you have kind of a lawn and some conventional shrubs, then just call it ornamental. But maybe that's not even right for our definition, you know? But I had people who were really interested, like a lot of people wanted to talk to me about what they're doing currently, what they want to do, what they wish they, what their neighbor's doing. So that was really cool. I felt like people engaged. They just weren't super psyched to stay. And I mean, Allison, I can't remember how many actually gave their email. Was it 5? I mean, it was minimal compared to the people who came by. So some people did use the QR code. But there was a lot of enthusiasm. I felt like we didn't quite catch them for future engagement, but maybe they'll look for it anyway. I don't know. The map was hard because it was really hard to see streets and stuff. So that was like, people be like, oh, I think it's here. And then they'd be with a friend who would say, no, you're actually, 3 inches over. And they're like, oh yeah, you're right. So I don't know that map is, the pins are reflecting accurate locations at all.
Don't worry about that too.
Okay. Yeah, but it was fun and it was really neat to engage with people and yeah.
Just to support that, I put my pin in Vanessa's map. And I'm good with maps and I knew where to put my pin, but it was really hard to find and none of the streets were marked and then for those people who are not good with maps, I could see how it'd be very confusing.
Vanessa, I think just said I told you while on mute. I also told them to add like 20 streets, so it's an improvement from where it was. I was like, we really identify things by cross streets. We're gonna need all these cross streets, but even so, it's a scale that is hard to get enough detail in. Yeah. I will note that, so I did the library event and the tabling at the Milwaukee Forest tour on Thursday. So these were all for Sustainable, and I think it's worth just saying most of the people attending these events are already inclined to be enthusiastic about environmental stuff. So whether or not that is a success, I'm not sure it's worth deciding or if it's fine. Or if it's worth saying like, oh, it would be good for us to be in some places where people are not already at a 10 of excitement for pollinator gardens. Because I noticed most of the people filling out the form were at a 10. I got one person who is nervous about stuff, and I was like, please fill it out. I want you to fill it out because we need that input too. But mostly, you know, it's helping people who are already enthusiastic about this, which is in some ways maybe fine. I also want to suggest that it's like kind of okay for us to start somewhere and for that somewhere to be with people who maybe haven't known exactly how to get started but are excited to get started. So I'm not saying that's a failure, but I also think it's something that we should be thinking about. Yeah.
So I had a question. What list are they signing up for?
Oh, I think they're
Like,
just giving us their email address and saying if they are excited to plant or if they want to know updates about what is it? It says email updates throughout planning, email me when the plan is published. I'd like to develop a garden, advocate for a new garden.
okay. Because I was just thinking, oh gosh, if we could house this under our urban forestry committee, enthusiasts kill two birds with one stone, but I understand people maybe just wanting to have this just, you know, we're asking a very pointed question about gardening in your yard. And so, that I'm thinking if we're not getting a lot of responses, I wonder if it could be condensed, but we have to ask people's permission. Anyway.
I think there are opportunities when we've gathered like, you know, email addresses from folks who are excited about other projects that we can ask them if they want to be signed up for updates about this too. Like, I think it's fine for us to do that. I wouldn't assume that all of those things overlap, but.
I think a hook would be to say, do you want to, you know about when we're having native plant giveaways? I think people would be like, yes, tell me now. Sign up. And that's, you know, what we've done with Vanessa has sourced for Arbor Day and we did it with the parking day. And then, so, you know, that might get a few more people signed up because that's the big thing. Where do I get these plants? I can't get them at Ricky's, you know, like really limited. So that's I think that's kind of the big hurdle is just like, well, what do I plant? Where do I get them? Oh, here. So
Yeah, I had a couple people specifically say, where do I go? And I was, you know, suggesting garden in the woods, but that's a hike, especially if you don't have a car. Sorry, David. No, offense. But yeah, it would be really good to have sort of options for people.
yeah. My client got trailing arbutus. Is that how you say it? At Mahoney's. I have never smelled it. Our native, our our state flower, the Mayflower. It is so gorgeous, and I was surprised that Mahoney's carried it. So.
I appreciate the point that plant giveaways are a real hook. And that planning some would be a great way to get more people into this conversation.
I know procurement is, it's not super clear to the average resident how the city can procure things, but would it be possible for so having free giveaways, I think that's really important, but also for people who have the means, but maybe not knowing where to go, able to order through us and have a big order come in and then they get their plants that way. They're paying for it, but they're not having to worry about, oh, is it a cultivar? Oh, is it native? It's like, I want one of those, and then we get it for them.
I can't imagine we could do, I think we might be able to, or put in an order and have people. But I don't think we could take orders from people. Michael,
Plus-
do you?
Just the work. Imagine 10 people or 25 people ordered 50 or 100 plants. We received them, we had to sort them, we had to store them until whatever day it was, we gave them away. And then what if people didn't show up? What did we do? Plus, who's going to staff the giving out of the plants? It's just, those are not bad ideas. It's just that this is kind of a Louisa answer. Sure, it's great, but who's going to do the work? So,
Thank you, Mike.
yeah.
I think if there are opportunities for us to source things and make them available for other people, that would be a nice way to leverage our intentions for the greater public, but we'll have to have conversations about procurement and yeah, even I was storing things in my backyard for the Milwaukee Forest, so if it was a bunch more people, like DPW can't store things, we're not equipped to be a go-between between nurseries and other people. But
Allison, you had said before that the city can't recommend anyone. I guess it's
can't
because,
endorse,
well, that's a thin line, recommend, endorse. But what if we made a list of a number of providers of such plants? This is just, and put a disclaimer on it. This is not an endorsement. This is not a complete list, but here's some available places to get good stuff, not
Yeah.
tainted stuff, like the garden in the woods.
Offshoots has a lot of research on sources. This is something they've done prior to working with us. So I'll ask them if they've already thought about how to integrate thinking about sourcing into this yet, or if we could have a conversation about it. Because I know they've been doing a lot of that work over the course of many years. So
one way I thought last year, Grow Native, they had a they're part of the farmers market at Kendall Square, I think on a Wednesday or a Thursday. And it was a native plant farmers market. And we have space to do that. It was run through Grow Native. But there were nurseries from all around who had the plants, mostly like ports and plugs, but that you don't want to be planting much greater than that size. So, but we also should be handing, like, giving people plants. But that's
that sounds great. Why don't you organize it for the Union Square Farmers Market?
Yeah, that could be a thing. I really like a Sunday because you don't have to worry about stupid parking. But yeah. Well, I was also thinking maybe the growing center would be nice to have it at the growing center. But if, you know, if the location, the Union Square location is already well known and gets a ton of traffic. Okay. I mean, I'm not
Mhm.
saying, okay, I'll do it. I'm saying these are good thoughts.
I want to put in a plug. So the thing I was hoping to do in breakout groups, and maybe we don't need to do that anyway, because it's such a small group of us here today. But is to come back to this question of relationship building and thinking outside the box a bit of how we can get in touch with, connected to groups that aren't just the folks who are already coming to our sustainable events. I think well-attended events that people go to for other reasons, like the farmer's market is a great one. Not everybody that goes to the farmer's market is already on board with planting for wasps. You know, there's certainly space for there to be conversations there with folks who might be new to this. Maybe not entirely new, maybe it does attract a slightly predictable demographic, but not entirely. But I also want to put in a plug for Cynthia, mentioned at our when we had this conversation, about going to the Greek Orthodox Church in Somerville. They were doing a plant swap, asked the garden club to be involved. And she, I think, was able to, talk to people who are not normally engaged with the garden club, reach into a group of like a part of the Somerville community that she doesn't normally engage with. And so I really do want to invite us to think about like who in your world could you ask, like, do you have an event coming up? Could we give a talk? Like, could we come visit this group of people? And maybe it's not that tabling is the best way that we do this, but that we, you know, present information about the plan. We can think creatively about how we get folks engaged with these materials, but I wanted to ask, maybe I can just ask each one of you to brainstorm a little bit of like, who could you reach out to and ask if they have any events coming up, or if they would like to have an event that you could attend. And maybe it's bringing plants to give away, maybe it's just talking about this, but with a group of people that wouldn't necessarily already be having this conversation.
I know I spoke at the Kiwanis Club this month, almost last month, about depaving. They had reached out to me. Oh, they came to our rodent presentation at the library. And the president reached out to me, and they've had a wide variety of speakers on a wide variety of topics, and they were really engaged. I don't know that any of them will show up at depavings or want to depave, but I think they're open. They really see themselves as an education group. And I pretty much know nothing about the Kiwanis Club, but I'm just like, from sitting with them and having lunch for an hour and a half and talking, they ask great questions. They're really curious. They may or may not be part of the Rotary Club, but maybe they're totally separate. But I feel like clubs like that might actually be a way. I mean, they're sort of old Somerville in a way. Like, so many of these people have lived here for generations, and you never see them at the meetings I go to. You don't see them at the farmer's market, but it's a real into a whole chunk of Somerville that I personally don't know. I'd be happy to connect any one of us with Dawn. I mean, I could talk again, but they just had me. So, I mean, I feel like if I was a new face, it might be
Yeah.
good. Be happy to connect any one of us to Dawn. She was lovely. It was great. It was really fun. They got me lunch. It was nice. So that's an option. I mean, that's
If
something.
you could, that's great. If you could like get a date, we could figure out which one of us makes sense, you know, is it available to go? Maybe multiple of us, but if you can be the entry point for that and get it on our calendar of events, that would be amazing. I'm trying to be super action oriented right now because we have like time is flying, so I'm trying to really get things on the calendar.
Well, I mean, I was just thinking of like we have a few neighborhood councils, like I wonder if Gilman Square or Union Square Neighborhood Council would want to add like 10 or 15 minutes to their agenda. As I speak this, I'm like, oh, Union Square Neighborhood Council might not want, we're just very busy. Yeah, just to give kind of like, maybe just some groups that we don't attend. Council on Aging. I haven't been to an event that they have had. The library is, they have lots of volunteers, and I recently started getting their volunteer info. So I think like that's kind of a no-brainer that I have not often thought about. So, and also just wanted to say that Allison, I just sent some information to you. Cambridge has a big plant swap this Saturday, May 4th, and then May 5th, there's a rain date. And then another one on May 5th. There's a few locations. I can send that to everyone who's here. It's Helen Snively. If we're trading
Is that
plants,
separate from the, oh, sorry.
oh no. And then if we're trading plants, everything has to be bare root because of jumping worms. Are you gonna say, Renee?
Is that the same as the Biodiversity Day at Danahy Park, or is that a separate event? Because Biodiversity Day is this Saturday at Danahy.
I wonder if this is a typo. Helen wrote May 5th, 10 to 2 at Dana Park, Cambridge. Plant seed swap and neighborhood cleanup.
I think Dana Park might be separate. Oh, anyway,
Yeah.
I am at Danahy Park for Biodiversity Day on Saturday. I'm not going to be able to do full on pollinator action plan, but I could have a QR code and info sheet or something.
Great. Yep. All of the materials are online. If you need something different, just let me know. But otherwise, if you can,
Do you have I don't. Does anyone have a little stand that I could put a QR code in? And like a little info just to like Somerville's doing this, learn more here.
I do. If you swing by City Hall on, yeah, anytime after tomorrow, I could have it ready for you.
Okay. Great.
The Mystic River Watershed is having their annual road race on the 19th. And I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. It's called the Herring Run because it happens during the Herring Run. And it starts at Blessing the Bay Boathouse. And they have kind of a little bit of a fair usually associated with it. I could talk to them and see if it's possible for us to set up something there.
Yeah.
I
Let's
don't
do
know.
it.
I don't know if it's too short of notice but I'll give
We're
them a
ready
call.
to go. It's all in
So-
a bag. It's in my car. We can do it anytime.
All right, I will talk to the organizer and see if we can work it out, and I'll let you know.
Okay, Michael's talking to Myra. Renee's talking to the Kiwanis Club. What else we got? Tori, you named a few. Do you want to be an entry point to ask if there's an opportunity for the neighborhood councils? I know there's a lot going on with them.
Yeah, I just like, I see people's eyes rolling already. But it's
It
just
could
weird. Well, at
be-
least Union Square Neighborhood Council is deep in it with Summer Nova and like a bunch of different plans. So I'm just looking at the library to see if they have anything, excuse me, upcoming. Oh, they have a gardening workshop. Give me just a moment
Yeah.
and I'll think on it. And
While you're thinking.
Saturdays, they have gardening workshops. May 4th, June 1st, June 29th. That's with Green City Growers. Yeah, I can put an ask in on the neighborhood councils.
Great. It could be that we have like, I don't know, a lunch and learn or something that is separate from neighborhood council meetings, but is
Well-
targeted for the neighborhood council community.
Well, what about how about at the pop-up, the community council, there's
This summer?
it's open now.
Oh.
It's through, I don't think of Culture House.
Mhm.
We applied, Unionsway Neighborhood Council and Culture House applied for a pop-up community center. And it's located in Union Square, and you can sign up to do an event. So there's a possibility.
Yeah,
Maybe we can tag, I'm just now, I'll look up what their events are to see if like, because it's a small space. I mean, I want our time to be well used, no. Pop up.
Does the Chamber of Commerce have speakers ever?
look it up. David went away. I was gonna ask him, but he's gone. Amy, Vanessa, anyone that's like outside of your normal network that you could imagine trying to make a connection with?
I'm trying to think of something. I haven't.
Yeah.
Come up with any ideas in the last 10 minutes though.
Amy, I don't know if you were on yet, but oh no, I think you were when I was talking about the video. I feel like getting kids at school is so important.
Yes.
And
Sorry.
I don't know if the PTA could the PTA do something?
Yeah, I mean, I put all our PT events on the calendar. I was thinking, I guess I was trying to think of the other things, but yeah, I mean, I put all the school events that I know of on our calendar already that were coming up.
I don't have anything real new, but Tori mentioned Council on Aging, which I was thinking of too, since I went to one of their board meetings and they have some sort of regular like lunch event that might be good. I don't know. Yeah, it would be outside of my usual network.
That'd be great. Yeah. Are you open to making that connection?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'll ask the PTA council if other schools have events that we could go to. I put the East ones on there, I guess, but I guess I haven't asked other schools, so I could do that. Just ask the council if any other schools have end of year events that we could table at potentially.
That'd be great. Or something to speak at briefly, we can be flexible on the format. On my to-do list is to do a lunch and learn with the Summer Viva staff. They're like a group of liaisons into the immigrant communities, and so getting them on board with what we're doing is a good first step for helping them to share the word in immigrant communities too. So I need to do that. And then there might be, I'm hoping that some of those folks can make connections into the immigrant communities to see if there are folks who might be interested in talking more about this kind of thing.
I wonder, Tori, you mentioned libraries, if we could talk to children's librarians and have, they often do story hours, and if we could potentially pick a book for them to read and then give a really quick, 5-year-old level. Maybe it's like, don't be afraid of bees sort of discussion or something, something super quick. And maybe they'd even make it like, would the libraries make it? They often have books of them, they sort of feature books on a theme, and maybe it could be with Pollinator Week or something, have it be a pollinator theme.
Nice. Amazing, great. Michael, oh, you're on Myra, that's right, okay. And if you haven't already, take a look at the spreadsheet. I think there are some asks for help for events that are coming up. Uh, the Lisa's looking for one more person on Spring Garden Day, which is also this weekend, which would mean not a couple of you because you're already doing stuff. Yeah, let's just like, if we need to ping the group as an email, if there's a need, we can do that. You can coordinate with me if need be. But also keep checking out that spreadsheet and keep adding stuff. So if you make a connection, something pops up, get it in the spreadsheet. I'll keep an eye on it, but also if it's coming up more quickly, shoot me an email at the same time so that I know that we're working towards something in particular. And I have all the materials and I can easily share that. If you feel not confident in like the way that you're engaging with people too, we can talk about it beforehand to make sure that like you feel like you know what you're asking of people and what you have to offer. And I can also help table at some things too, so. Or attend a talk or talk about city's work, whatever. Okay, I will send everyone else who isn't here a prompt to try to identify somebody as well, so we can get them doing it too, so it's not just us. But I am trying to like fully embody this all hands on deck feeling right now of like, okay, this is the time, let's do it. And it'll be ongoing clearly, and we're gonna have to think about how this plays out into the future. One question I'm curious about is once we're done with these committee meetings, when the plan is published, how do we all relate to each other on outreach moving forward? That'll be a question that we'll need to answer too. So you can think about your interest in being involved in the future beyond that as well. Yeah, theoretically by July, we will lose this official structure, but we will still be looking to promote the plan. So keep that in mind and think about that.
Does anyone know
And
if
maybe that's where, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, just thinking about the, how there are the climate ambassadors, and again, when maybe that's when the pollinator ambassadors can, if it happens this year or next year, to sort of continue the work.
I think the spring board community meetings are coming up. That would the
Yes.
counselors let
Pizza.
us have 5 minutes to update there? Do you think?
Oh, at those events are very informal this time around. They're just gonna be sort of like we're here eating pizza and you can chat with us.
Was that what the slice thing is?
Yeah.
It's the community meeting?
Yeah, I think they're trying to make it a little more approachable to a wider audience
Okay.
who might be less inclined to go to a formal public meeting. So it's just gonna be folks in a location, mostly outside if it's not raining, with pizza, so we can chat about stuff. So we can, I will be at the first two, one's on Thursday, one's next Monday. But there's not really like a formal structure around it, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I'm not sure. We'll see.
Yeah. Could we ask I don't know if this is like crossing weird lines, but could we ask any counselor who has a newsletter to post something for us?
Yeah, great question. Yes, I bet we could do that.
Allison, where's the listing of those meetings? They're by ward, correct?
Another great meeting. They are by ward. Yep. Let me pull them up. They're called Slice of the City. So the first two were Ward 4 and Ward 1, and they'll go throughout May.
Okay. I have another question.
Yeah.
People have been talking about turning off their outside lights, obviously for insects. There is a thing called lights out. I don't believe Somerville ever got involved in it because Boston and Mass Audubon developed a lights out program to turn off lights in tall buildings to protect migrating birds. At the time that they developed that program, there were no tall buildings in Somerville. There are, however, a few tall buildings in Somerville now. Is there any way we could work on expanding that to be a lights out program for migrating birds as well for the city?
I have no idea off the bat, but perhaps it sounds really interesting. I'm happy to take a peek and mention it to our department just as a first step and
Right, I'll see if I can send you a link. I know Mass Audubon
Okay.
does it. And like I said, when they developed it with the city of Boston, it was like 1995 or something.
Yeah.
And there were no tall buildings in Somerville, so there would not be such a program here. But we all know the skyline has changed significantly since then. So
Do you have any sense of if it made a difference? Have they
apparently it
done
did. What
it?
happens is, I don't know if you're familiar with bird migration. We are coming into the meat of the migration season the next 3 to 4 weeks. A lot of birds migrate at night. Birds have no concept of glass and they get confused by the lights that are on. So you have a tall building with its lights on and they collide with the windows and die. And it happens to probably over the whole country, millions of birds every migration season. So it's something that people try to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that probably never happened in this city for the obvious reasons.
Right.
So,
Very interesting. Yeah, send me a link. I'm very curious.
okay.
And it's interesting in tandem with the pollinator plan, since we're also talking about light spillage onto plants, but okay. Anything else? That's kind of my summary and my agenda for today. Any other questions or things we need to follow up on? I think the ambitions of our outreach can evolve as we go along too. But I know the more people, the better. So the more people at least know about the plan, the better. And then hopefully we get more and more, this snowballs a bit as people know the project's happening and
And
run
just
events.
and sort of the aim right now of getting the word out is just that, is to get the word out and to have people fill out a couple of the documents, or
Yeah.
you know, what would you be willing to do, what would you want to change, and
Yeah.
put their cross streets in a map if they would. That's kind of the main 3 points right now, because just let them know it's coming out and we're going to be doing stuff.
I think the things that there are some things that offshoots would like to know from this outreach. So they are hoping that we provide the feedback to them. And some of that is like our trying to do a bit of a survey to understand if people are nervous, hesitant, why. You know, we make some guesses as to why we might be fully on the mark, but maybe we're not exactly. So using this outreach as a way to get a sense of like, are there any things that you're hesitant about, and tell us why. Also to get a bit of an understanding from people of what are you willing to do? What are you capable of doing? Like, how would you consider participating? And if it's that, you know, no one says they're willing to do insect ID, but everyone says they're willing to plant things, and maybe no one's willing to use no pesticides. That there's some information that might come from that as well.
Okay.
I think the mapping exercise is also helpful for us to understand a little bit of what's in people's backyards. So there is an outreach intention for gathering data from this, so it's not just plan promotion, which is why I'm trying to go harder now. So that there is some degree of information sharing with offshoots that can happen, but then clearly it'll extend beyond.
So I'm very glad I asked that question, because that gives context to everything. Because I'm just like, okay, yeah, I'll tell people about the plan, but no, we actually need some
It would
data
be
to
great.
get back to. Okay, that helps.
Yeah. So when I'm at a table with someone, I'm like trying, you know, I'm sort of giving them a little bit of a spiel of we're doing this plan and we're trying to understand how people feel about it and if people are already gardening. But if you don't have a garden and you're, you know, maybe you don't have any time and you're not willing to engage with us more than this, like here, at least take this little handout. So, yeah. Again, I think the people who are more willing to engage tend to be the folks who are already kind of excited about this. So I'm trying to get people when they come to a table to be like, we want everyone to fill this out. You too, even if you're not excited.
I wonder if there can be some supporting documentation for the recommendations we're making. So when we say don't use pesticides, explain why they're so bad and not just for insects, but for human health as well, and why they're not actually helping in a lot of ways. And like, even if we don't have tons of literature, even if we can just like point them to, if you want to learn more, go check out Beyond Pesticides, whatever, like give them some info, in the light, like, why are we asking you to turn lights out? And give them background info on that, or at least access to background info. I think that could be helpful.
Yeah.
I worry, especially with the pesticides, people are going to say, but I don't want ticks. And like, but it's not even effectively killing ticks, but like give them the next level of why we're asking that.
Yeah. Uh-huh, yep. I think for sure in the plan,
Okay.
whether or not, I wonder, and just from your own experience, like, do you feel like there was an appetite for that level of backup info at a tabling event? If so, we could try to mobilize to get some of those resources sooner. But if you're thinking about more just sort of like larger, I don't know, future events, once the plan is out, that material should be more available to be able to point to and say, like, here are these things you can follow the information, like data traces. But if you need something sooner, then
I didn't have any specific questions on that. I'm just sort of
Yeah.
thinking about like, people might want to know why we're saying that.
yeah.
What are the consequences? If I stop using pesticides, is my family gonna all get Lyme disease,
Yep. Yeah, great.
Yeah, and same with mosquitoes, like.
Yep.
If we have options, maybe not right now. But if we are. Like, you can put on a fan, I mean,
Yeah, there's
and
some
stop
wonderful,
leaving.
yeah,
Like, don't leave water around.
Yeah,
If,
exactly.
unless you're gonna change it regularly for like birds or something, then small.
Right.
Yeah.
Insects.
Okay, it's 5:30. We should wrap up. Unless there are any last things, but thank you all for being here on this sparsely attended, but still very helpful day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
All
nice
right,
to see
bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye,
Nice to
everybody.
see
See
you
you
all.
soon. Thanks again.